I didn't get into marriage to have children. You know, biblically it is companionship and a helper.
Yeah.
Children, the Bible says, are a blessing from the Lord. It took us a long time. First year, nothing. Second year, nothing. Third year, nothing. In fact, we started to not even think about it at all because people would have insinuations towards it. Family would have insinuations towards it. Your senior pastors would have insinuations towards it. And it was an embarrassing situation. And some people would tell you need deliverance. Then they'll tell you of some woman that side or some pastor the other side and so on. Men are not the Superman that has no feelings, that don't get hurt, that don't fail. You look at your values and you say to yourself, I cannot be unfaithful to my values. You struggle in spaces, in the business area, amongst the men, when you're introducing yourself, talking about yourself, you struggle. Of course, you know she's also struggling, but you feel like the head of the whole, you are failing. Yeah. And then you hear people saying, everything rises and falls on the leader. And who is the leader?
The man.
I said to my wife, you know what? We seem to be going according to the expectations of other people. Let us relax. If it comes, great. If it doesn't, let's move on. But along the way, we know that somehow God will do something.
Hi everybody, welcome to today's episode, which is actually going to be a 3-part episode where we are talking about a journey that is inspirational to many, a journey that you and I can learn something from. I'm very privileged to host a couple that has taken adoption as a choice that many of the people don't usually consider. And today we are going to learn so much about adoption, about waiting as a couple, especially if there is a couple that has waited for so long for a child, for children. What are the challenges in there? And particularly, we are going to start with the man's perspective. The reason why we're starting with the man's perspective is because many times men don't talk about this. They don't talk about what they go through when the couple is in waiting. What does a man go through when himself and the wife are waiting on God for a baby? What does it take? What are the pressures in? And how can those be managed from a man's perspective? We shall later have the woman. We shall later have the whole beautiful story, how it ended up being so beautiful. You guys, this is such a beautiful story. You will love every bit of it. And trust me, you will have so many lessons to learn. So please join me as we welcome Pastor Mark Chigozi. You're welcome, sir.
Thank you.
How are you?
Doing well.
Yes.
As often.
Oh, yes. With a smile. Pastor Mark has always smiled from the time I knew him. Even on today's podcast, you can see it. Yeah, you're welcome. Nice to have you today.
Thank you.
Yeah, Pastor Mark, today we are talking about waiting.
Waiting?
Yes.
Like waiting in a line?
Yes, waiting, but from a man's perspective. And before we go to the topic, maybe you could tell us briefly, who is Mark?
Who is Mark? I am the fourth born in our family, because we are 9 children.
Yes.
5 boys, 4 girls.
Yeah.
My father is deceased.
Yeah.
My mother is alive.
Oh, yeah.
Thank God. I have 4 brothers and 4 sisters. I come number 4 of the boys.
Yes.
And then 1 boy and then 4 girls.
Yeah.
I am by training a teacher.
Yeah.
I did my diploma in secondary education, and then I went back and did my bachelor's in education. But I somewhere along the line, went and did my bachelor's in theology and
Yes.
pastoral studies.
Yeah.
Was a youth pastor at Watoto Church, one of the very first pastors there as a youth pastor. That's where, in fact, I found my wife.
Okay.
In the youth ministry. Was there for 8 years in the youth ministry, and then finally I was in. We planted the Watoto, which is right now in Namave.
Okay.
We started in Nambole Stadium.
Okay.
And in 2008, we felt our time there had ended. We started Real Life Ministries, which is in Bergen. We are pastoring there. But I have a passion. I have a passion for health, body, soul, and spirit. Sometimes we only talk about eating well, juicing and all those things. But your internal health also, what you think about, your self-esteem and so on. That is also part of health, but also your spiritual health, your connection with the divine. And so when all that is together, then the person is healthy. Now, that is basically what I do. So I am basically both a Christian and clinical counselor, handling things in all the areas and spheres of life with my wife. Married to one woman. Yes. Name is Maureen. And we have 3 kids in the house, but we have raised so many other children.
Oh, yes.
Because we love making sure that people are happy. That's what gives us joy. That's briefly. I don't know if that is brief.
Yeah. It's not brief, but it's okay. It's okay. But thank you for that. You mentioned something in there that you met your wife at church.
Yes.
And then got married.
Yeah.
Now, fast tracking. I know you went through a waiting journey to have children.
Waiting for what? Waiting for a wife? Yes,
for
I waited
child
until I was 31.
Okay. And okay, I know you went through a waiting
then I got married
period after marriage.
Yeah.
To get into having children.
Yes.
Now, how was it from the time you got married up to the time you got children?
Well,
kindly take us through that experience.
Number one, I didn't get into marriage to have children.
Yes.
Okay, that's the first thing I encourage people with. You don't get there to have children. You know, biblically it is companionship and a helper.
Yeah.
Children, the Bible says, are a blessing from the Lord. They are not a right for anyone who gets married. So when you get there wanting children, the stress itself can make you not enjoy each other's companionship and do many things. But when we got there, of course, after 1 year, people are asking themselves, what's going on? They're not seeing something. And you say, what do you want to see?
Yes.
They say, is she vomiting? Is she asking for, raw mangoes? All those kinds. And say, no. Are you still family planning? And then you say, no. So what is going on?
Yeah.
And we say, we are waiting. Are you working? I say, yeah, I'm working in the morning, in the afternoon, and in the evening.
Yes.
And then, and people wonder, what's going on?
Yeah.
What's going on?
Yeah.
And it took us a long time. First year, nothing. Second year, nothing. Third year, nothing. In fact, we started to not even think about it at all because people would have insinuations towards it. Family would have insinuations towards it. Your senior pastors would have insinuations towards it. Some of the leaders have insinuations towards it. And that would put you on pressure, but you didn't want that to get into the way at all. And at one point, we had to sit down and ask ourselves, do we want children? We said yes.
That was in the 4th year when you
Yeah.
started those
You know,
questions?
there were whispers in the, whatever, what's going on, what's da 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 da, di, 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 di. People tell you to go and see a doctor somewhere, then you go and see a doctor somewhere and he says, no, you are fine. Just relax a bit and don't put too much on it. And then, of course, my wife would go there, they do their tests, she's okay and fine. And finally, say, but also sometimes the man could be the problem. He also needs to go and see a gynecologist. And so I was there and I remember an embarrassing situation. I also went and the guy is checking me out. I don't even know how you ladies handle it. The guy is telling you now, take off this, put your leg there, put that. Then the guy looks down there and then this guy was looking and I was saying to myself, what am I doing here?
Yeah.
And what is he checking anyway? And it was an embarrassing situation. And some people would tell you need deliverance. Then they'll tell you of some woman that side or some pastor the other side and so on. Until I came to a place and I said to my wife, you know what? We seem to be going according to the expectations of other people. By this time you should be. By this time. Let us relax. If it comes, great. If it doesn't, let's move on. But along the way, we know that somehow God will do something. And then we said, as we wait, we still want to at least be a dad and a blessing, a mother, offer a home to some other child who may not have parents. Now that idea was floated by my wife, and that was good. And I jumped onto it. I said, wow, okay.
Which year was that when that idea
That must have been about the 4th year.
The 4th year.
And then we started looking around.
Yeah.
Because you see, to me, it's not just picking up a child for relief.
Yeah.
Just like people go to an orphanage and then they say, we shall give you this child and you look after. No, it's not that. The thing is that there must be a connection between you and the child if you are to adopt them and bring them in. So we went to some places and they said, no, this one is more needy. And I said, I'm not here as a relief organization. I am here to take on a child as a father and as a mother. Yeah. Okay. So we went to a number of places. I can mention some of them. There was one place in Mukono. We were in Malaika's place somewhere, which used to be, I don't know if it is still there. When we went to some Zambia babies home, and then we went to Sanyu babies home, we kept looking, but whenever people would say, there's this one, they look cute, my heart was not there.
Now, Pastor Mark, before we go to the bit of the adoption story, still on the waiting period.
Yeah.
We shall come back to the adoption, but still on the waiting period, I want us to handle something about men there.
Yeah.
Many times in marriages, when a couple is in waiting, men usually don't talk about what they're going through. Yeah. They usually don't talk about their struggles, the pressures that
because
come
no
from
one
family.
Asks them.
No one asks. Really?
They ask the woman.
Oh, wow.
They fear the men. Because I do find that many times people look for the softer spot because they seem to feel that the ladies are more emotional and they will want to talk about it. But they leave the man there. It's a cultural thing.
Yeah.
Men are not supposed to feel pain. They're supposed to bear it. They're not supposed to cry. They're not supposed to show weakness. And so they feel, I think it's the lady really going through it. But no one talks to the man because there is a fear that, I don't know why. So, you could see people going to my wife. You see ladies around her. But men come they talk about the weather, they talk about Arsenal, they talk about Manchester, they talk about other things. It is very hard for you to find even men sitting down with other men and saying, how are you handling this?
Yet actually men go through that pain.
A lot. You see, when the child is not there, it is not the woman that goes through much of that pain. It is the man who has a feeling of incapacity. Because the feeling is, what are you doing about it? You are the man here.
Yeah.
As if people want to go for the softer, emotional person. But the man is there saying, the real reason why she may not have, it could be that they are saying this guy is not man enough. And he goes through that. And wherever, I do remember, I used to be in meetings and you're the pastor and then you have to stand up and introduce yourself and say, okay, I'm Pastor Mark here and this is my wife Maureen, and people are expecting more.
Yeah.
How long have you been married? 5 years. The family?
Yeah.
We are waiting for what? Now, even saying that is painful for the man because he feels a certain level of shame before his peers. It's just like have you noticed that in your churches or the churches where we go, there are more women in church
than
men.
Than men, yes.
Now, a woman can easily get on a border or take a special hire or whatever, a taxi, and go to church. A man will first get to church and then look at the parking area and see fellow men parking and getting their wives out. And then he starts to feel, I think that's why they don't ask me to sit in front. That's why the other one who has the Benz sits in front. And he starts to feel bad. And then he says, let me go and make some money. The day he buys a car, you'll see him coming with Ali with his key, and then he will, he will come in with pride. But before that, you will see him a bit shy, a bit laid back, and he is struggling with himself. But no one sometimes looks at that. And so, even going through that time, you struggle in spaces, in the business area, amongst the men, when you're introducing yourself, talking about yourself, you struggle. Of course, she's also struggling, but you feel like the head of the home. You are failing. Yeah. And then you hear people saying, everything rises and falls on the leader. And who is the leader?
The man. Now, Pastor Mark, just pause there. That is already so rich, but I want you to speak to a man in that kind of life right now. Because what you've said is so evident that it is happening. How can a man in waiting, now we've even diverted a bit, it might not be just for a child, but it could be for, certain things they've dreamt of having. Someone in that space of inadequacy, how can they truly find their identity and esteem?
That's a very hard one. It's a very hard one. Because I would say this first. The world has no place for weakness in a man. It's only the bar. When you find men in the bar drinking, it's not because they have money. It's because they are drowning their sorrows away. When they look everywhere everyone is hitting on them. By this time you should have a car. By this time you should have built a house. By this time you should have this number of children. By this time you should be like this. And there's a way society will not tolerate a man's weakness.
Yeah.
They can handle a woman. When a woman cries out there's going to be so many men ready to give her a hug and women to run around him. You cry as a man there. Someone will box you and say, men don't cry.
Man up.
You man up. Get yourself out. Do something. And then you say, hey, so I'm supposed to suck it up. And the more you suck it up, the more it kills you inside. And the only outlet is, unfortunately, the unacceptable one. You drink, you're on drugs, you become violent. Someone asks you, tells you there are no onions. Now that is, do you see my situation and you are asking for, then you beat. And then they say, what started the fight? It was not the onions. It was the feeling of inadequacy. Now, how do men handle that? It is very, very imperative, number one, that we change the narrative in society. Men are not the Superman that has no feelings, that don't get hurt, that don't fail. That's the first thing. They fail. Now, I would also talk to a man that is there who is just hiding. You know, men we do a lot to impress. You see them from courting and dating. You know, he borrows a car, he borrows a suit, he borrows money, he impresses the girl. Let us come out of the impressions and make true friendships. Because you see, if you come to me at this level, you will attract people of that level where you are not, and your inadequacy will grow.
Oh yes, your insecurities will
grow. You know, you try and attract a guy who has a car and who has a house, and he thinks you have one because you've borrowed a few things, you're talking posh and so on. But every time you look at him, they are his. But when you look at yourself, what you are is not you. Now, you need to come to a place where you say to yourself, those guys are better than me. They know more than me. What I need to do is to humble myself and learn from them.
Those are the meaningful relationships.
You say to yourself, I am challenged in this area. Who is the person that has been where I am and gone through that I can go and learn from and get mentorship from? Men are so proud sometimes, and sometimes it's not just pride. Sometimes it is fear. Fear disguised as pride. That if I am seen for who I am, I will be belittled. And so they continue to pretend. But that pretense leads them to depression. Because it is you in yourself who knows who you are and what you're trying to become. And the pressure to look the part kills you.
Yeah.
So you come to a place where you say to yourself, this is my challenge. Let me find value-based, character-filled men.
Oh, yes.
That I can share my life with, and they can help me.
Lift you.
You know, they can help you. They can hold you up. There are times when you say, like Peter on the Sea of Galilee, Lord, I am sinking. Help me. Sometimes, men, you need to shout to the right people. Don't just shout in the street. They will shoot you dead. Just find those meaningful relationships and learn. But also learn that who you are is not based on the toys you have or your performance. A man is not one who has many children. Otherwise, we can have too many children with so many women.
Yeah.
But it is a character thing. You see, in the middle of all that, there were so many people who said to me, you know, how long are you going to stay here without kids? Okay, how long? Look at this other guy. You know, he went out and he did something, and as you wait for the other one, do something, and maybe something, you know, by the time this one works, you will have worked something here, and so on. And you look at your values and you say to yourself, I cannot be unfaithful to my values. So you start to surround yourself with the right people, the right values, and you wait. And in the middle of that, we said, why do people want children? So that they have someone they can minister to. Someone you give your life to, someone to impact, someone to bring up, someone to... And we said, there are so many people who want children and they don't have them. But there are so many others who also have children, but they don't want them.
Oh, yes.
So why don't you minister to those children that have been rejected? Why don't you give them a home as you wait? After all,
Pastor Mark, you mentioned something there which I feel we need to highlight, where you say that we get children to impact them. You see, many times, even like as parents, sometimes when you give birth to a child, you feel like, okay, this is my baby, this is somebody I've given birth to, but there's no effort to take to actually impact their lives, to look at how I can be of great impact to my
this
child.
Yes.
You see, I think it's something that is not discussed a lot.
I think parenting, it has not been talked about much, because we just rear children like we rear goats and rear cows.
Yes.
You know, so long as they go to school and you pay the fees and they eat and they drink and they have a bed to stay, you think you have done the job.
But you're not impacting.
You see, having children is only the beginning of the work. It's not, in fact, too big. Anyone can go down the road and impregnate a girl and the child will be there. But taking responsibility to make sure this child becomes a responsible, successful, really holistic person is a lot of work. Now, I've seen people who have wanted children, and when they get them, they don't know what to do with them. Now, that's when they say, no, I also want my me time. I want to spend time with my girls out. I want to go on a holiday. The children. And then you take them to boarding school. Who is raising your children?
Oh, yeah. Who is impacting?
Now, the children have grown up and they have rejection. They don't know their parents. They have caught bad habits. And now you start to say, look at what the world is turning into. No, that is what you have made them.
The world has impacted them, in short.
Yeah,
because you gave them to the world.
Yeah, that's exactly. And when you go to the teachers, these days I go to schools and I look at these teachers. They are children. Someone tells you, I'm 22 years of age. Now, I've given my child to another child to become like a father. No, you can't.
You can't.
So you see, you run away from your responsibility. After the thing comes, the blessing comes, it becomes a burden to you. You must be available.
Oh, yes. Thank you. Thank you, Pastor Mark. I want us now to go to the adoption story, which we are going to continue even in our last episode. But for now, I want us to take key note of the things you've talked about, especially for a man in waiting. Number one, to find meaningful relationships of people that you're accountable to, people that can uphold you, people that you pour out your heart to.
Yep.
You don't have to, die as a man and don't talk and don't cry. You don't do it on the street. Actually, you mentioned something like, you don't do that on the street. You don't go on social media and start pouring out your issue. No, but you get really spirit-filled, character-filled men and be accountable to them. And that's very I think for this particular episode, that's very key for us. I don't know if you have anything to add on the waiting bit before we go to the adoption story.
Let's go.
That's okay. So thank you so much. We are going to now continue with the adoption story in a subsequent episodes. We'll get to know how Pastor Mark and the wife later took on other children and how that can be also inspirational to you and me. But also most important to note here is how we are supposed to impact children, not just give birth to them. As you mentioned it hit me so hard that you can have a child you've not impacted.
Sure.
And that child is yours. But you can also choose to be of impact to your child. Every day you wake up wanting to impact this child, to turn this child into a person that you want them to be, that God wants them to be. Yeah, so thank you. Thank you so much.
Welcome.
And please watch out for the part of the adoption where we are going to continue with this conversation in our next episodes. So till next time, bye-bye.